Otto, take it away.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the organizers. I'm really impressed by ETHVAN because I think this is going on every Thursday for several years. I don't know how many years, but thanks for keeping up this completely volunteer run, and it's impressive that you managed to do it every Thursday. Cool. So I'm Otto. I will today talk about the history of money. I'm an independent consultant working in like cyber infrastructure and Linux and various open source stuff. I've never worked in the crypto industry or in the finance industry, so I'm not kind of expert in that sense. But as a hobby, I've like been doing some crypto stuff, and also I've been using money for a long time, and I believe you as well. So so everyone knows something about that. Because of my open source background and because crypto kind of like spun out from the open source movement, I learned about lots of things early on, and I've always been interested in the background of why people do things and where things come from. All right, let's start with the basic. What is the definition of money? So the classic Aristotelian definition of money is that it's a medium of exchange. You need it for trade. It's a unit of account, so you need to like be able to measure how valuable something is, and money needs to function for that. And it's a store of value, so if you trade it for something, you can have it for a while and then keep it past like time and distance, and then trade it to something else later on. And then this is the classic definition, these 3 points. One definition also, it's legal tender, which means that the government has decided that something is money. And the government, when it decides something is money, it usually will collect taxes in that thing and give fines to people, or courts order damages to be paid in this thing. And if you're holding it and the value goes up and down in relation to other stuff, then you don't have to pay capital gains, because it's the thing you measure everything else against. And if you borrow it, you get interest. People pay you interest, they don't pay you rent for it. So a lot of things could basically be those 3 first things, but the fourth thing like clearly defines something in a specific area as the actual money. And then very much money is also a belief system. It's based on trust, that people who exchange the money all believe that it has some value, that you get it, that you can later on use it for something, and it makes sense for you to hold it. Does anyone here know what this is? So it's a squirrel pelt. So I'm showing this because I'm from Finland, and this used to be the money in medieval times. And this is an interesting example because it doesn't feel like money, but actually it meets all those definitions I just showed in the previous slide. Like it's used for trading. It's a unit of account, so like there's some words in Finnish for like specific amounts of pelts. And the government was collecting taxes, and you had to pay them in amount of pelts to the government. So it fully functioned as money. And it's also kind of interesting because there was no mint doing this. You just got squirrel pelts by going and hunting for squirrels, but still this was fully money. And actually the Finnish word for money, raha, also stems from this thing. And then, since this is a crypto place, then a little known fact that Satoshi Nakamoto, if you change the letters a little bit, so it becomes Satoshi Nahkamona, in Finnish it means that your yield is a leather shoe. All right. So, but before money, there was barter. And this is another interesting word because it's kind of hiding a lot of things, why we have money in a single word in plain sight. Does anyone know where this word comes from? Yes. So Latin salarium means salary, and that word itself comes from sal, which means salt. And it's an old form of barter. It's pretty good barter because it lasts. It doesn't go bad. You can store it for a long time. It's very easy to verify if somebody gives you some white powder. You taste it, and then you know that is it salt or not. So it's very practical in that sense. The only thing is it's kind of hard to count. Like you have to do it by weight, probably not by corn or something. That wouldn't work. But it's one of the oldest forms, and it's very practical because you can use it to like store food or improve food. So it's even if you don't exchange it further, it's valuable for you. And over time, there has been basically anything can be used for barter, but some of the most popular things have been, of course, the pelts, livestock, camels. Still today in some Arabic countries, people like talk about exchanging things for X amount of camels, bronze, gold, copper, tools, barley corn, or the result of barley corn, beer. Beer has also been a very popular form of barter. And then seashells, and in particular this type of, it's called cowrie. Cowrie seashells have been very popular. But these are not that practical, and those definition of money, like the unit thing, doesn't necessarily work that well. So here's some money, and I'm going to walk you through this. And the things I've selected is based on that they kind of all have some connection to crypto later on in the history, and it's good. It's kind of interesting to know about it because if you understand the background, then you can maybe understand more what the thing is and where it's heading. And money is not debt. So debt is actually way older than money, because anyone can say that, like, I do you this favor and then you owe me a favor back. And the reason why we have money is because the debt doesn't work. You can't like exchange. It doesn't scale to exchange favors. And then most importantly, when societies grew and you're like exchanging with the neighboring tribe, whatever they say they owe you, they're not going to honor that. So you need to have something to barter. And so I'm going to skip the money part, the debt part. But and also, like, it's older, debt is older than money, and also debt is way, like, the quantity of debt is way more than what exists money in any form of way. So in US dollars, the Federal Reserve statistics says that currently the M0 dollar supply is 6 trillion, out of 2.4 trillion is in circulation. But then in banks and then different levels of credit in M1, M2, M3, it's way more. And the M3 is like the third level of deposits and credits, and they stopped publishing the statistics in 2006. But we know that US government debt alone is 38 trillion, so M3 must be at least 38 trillion. All right, so first coins. I actually took this picture myself in China, so it's already like 1,100 years before the start of time in Shang Dynasty China, made by casting copper or bronze, and bronze is mostly copper. And they are like bluish, greenish, and this design is very particular, that it's a round coin, but it has this square in the middle. And you could put this on a chain, so it's easier to transport them. So it's kind of funny that you have a circle and square. They enable that you could have money on chain. All right. Chinese also invented the first bills. So 2,000 years later, the 16 largest Sichuanese merchant companies founded the paper note bank. So they actually printed paper that said that if you have this paper with all these stamps, then it's like proves that it's legit, and you can go and convert it to coins. And the government adopted it, and there was also another version then later. It's very complicated. I am like really speed running this and simplifying things to show a high level. But just like imagine this was 1,000 years ago, and they already like had actual paper money printed on paper that had no intrinsic value. It was just that who issued it, you trusted who issued it, government adopted it, and government said that if you counterfeit this, it's punishable by death. And they collected taxes, so like basically all the properties of modern bills. And it was interesting because initially it has a fixed supply that they had to have the coins that you could convert it into. And also this had an expiration date, so they were valid for like 2 years or 3 years. But then, as we will see in history, people didn't actually honor this. The government printed more money than what they actually had. They kept raising the cap, and then also people continued using these notes beyond their expiration date. And then eventually, like, the government kept printing more and more and more, and then when the Mongols attacked, they just printed so much that everything went. The history of those bills ended there. Okay, so the first coins were struck in the Lydian Empire, which is now the west half of Turkey, 650 BC. And what makes this like the first coin is that these were made by stamping, and they had this picture of a lion on the front and then kind of a seal on the back. So before this, when people were bartering with gold or silver, that you had to like measure that how much silver or gold you have. Now the king was guaranteeing that if you have this coin, it has a specific weight and has a specific purity, so it was much more convenient. So this is the first coin. And the king who started with this was called Croesus. And you probably heard the expression of rich as Croesus. Anyone? No? And then also like the expression take at face value, it doesn't mean like the human face, it means the coin face, that you trust the face on the coin. And if we look at the history of coins, it's like animals, animal faces, king's faces, a lot of faces there. Very, very common theme for the coins. And this material was kind of special. It was called electrum. So it was a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver. And I don't know if anyone's used the Bitcoin wallet called Electrum. It got its name there. And you will notice that a lot of products and software has copied their names from the history of money. All right, so very soon after that, people realized this is a good idea. And then the Greeks started minting drachmas. And the word drachma means fistful. And but the drachma itself was like fistful is kind of like vague amount, that how much is that. Obviously, if you're bartering with salt or something, then a fistful is a unit, but it's very unexact. So the Greek drachma, at least initially, was very specifically 4.3 grams of silver. And this is interesting because the same weight like then went in history, that a lot of like money later and a lot of coins after this used the same weight because it kind of came standardized. And then the Greeks also, they had this system of deca and hexa and everything. And for coins, they had an elaborate system of denomination. And for example, 70 drachmas was 1 mina. And you maybe know also the mina layer 1 that exists. And note that this is not like based on like decimal system, it's like very weird conversions based on like 70 or 12 or 20 or 40 or something. This became quickly famous and spread with trade around the Mediterranean, and Arabs started also doing their coins, and in there the word they used was dirham. And then after the Greeks came the Romans, and what they invented was the So they started calling their coin denarius, pretty close, but has a different meaning. It comes from the word 10, and it was initially a 4.55 gram silver coin, and it has a more clear denomination system, and it was a bimetal system, actually three-metal system, that they also had gold coins and bronze coins, and they had like conversions and denominations between them. And the unit here actually was as. So if something is a half-ass attempt, then it's like a half bronze coin worth of effort. And aureus for gold. And this became also famous, spread with the Roman Empire, and a lot of languages then had dinar or something along that inherited its name from this. And initially it was 4.55 grams of silver, but as you famously know, the Roman Empire collapsed, and during the progression of the Roman Empire, they kept like minting the same coin, but decreasing the amount of silver they put in it. So it got inflated and people stopped trusting it. All right, we're still in the Roman times. Do you know what's the name of this astrological sign? Libra, yes. So if you wonder why is the British pound, why is the symbol like a L letter? It comes from Libra. So Libra means like refers to weight, and a lot of languages the word for the money is related to weight, like pound, or peso is also like derived from pound. And in the Semitic languages we have shekel, which also refers to weight. And also still like in Canada, when you talk about pound, the abbreviation is LB, has no P in it at all, and it comes from Libra. All right. And then the Roman coins were minted in the temple of Juno Moneta, and that's also where the word money in English comes from. And moneta like stems a little bit from the word mnemosis, like memory, so like a ledger or remember stuff, but it also means to warn. And kind of in English, if you warn, you kind of like remind people, so it's like a related thing. And this temple and other temples existed on Capitoline Hill, which is what the US government then copied to feel more sense of history. And the word capitalism also comes from the same capital word here, which then comes from the word that means the head. And yeah, so they had this, but and Juno is the name of the goddess, so that's like a woman's name. And also interestingly, like in Romans believed that like Juno was like protecting women, like a kind of your guardian angel for women was Juno, and the guardian angel for men was called Genius. Now we have the Genius Act. All these words are like have very long history, and it's interesting to like check where they came from, and they all have a reason. Yeah, so Juno was warning and minting the money, but unfortunately the Roman emperors didn't listen to that, and they kept on like inflating their money because people believed the coins, because average people can't check how pure gold actually or how pure silver actually is. So you could with these coins like just make them have less and less silver, and then kind of print more money, and then but then eventually people figure it out, and then the money inflates. So then by the year 300 or so, the Roman Empire was like falling apart. All right. After that, people didn't trust the Roman coins anymore. But the concept of these silver coins around like 3 to 4 grams was very like widespread. Right. And then after the Roman downfall, so in West Turkey, Constantinople like continued, and the Empire, they minted this coin called solidus, which was exactly 4.45 grams of gold. And this is one of the longest lasting coin that maintained its value. And this was very famous all around medieval Europe, and people trusted it and people wanted to have this. And other mints who made gold coins, they tried to copy the picture here when they were minting their gold coins to get the same trust for their own coins. So it lasted for 700 years. And as you know, we have Sol and we have Solidium, and they took their name from here. But eventually even this got inflated. They got a new emperor, and he decided to dilute it and print more, and it went sour. And then they had to stop. The reputation was lost. They had to stop doing this, and then they made a new coin called Hyperpyron. And that's a pretty cool sounding name, and nobody has done a crypto project on that yet, so there's one for you to pick for your next one. All right.
Quickly on that, what Pyron? Is Pyron something related to water or liquid or anything like that?
I think it's related to fire, but
I'm not sure.
Sure.
Okay. All right, slightly different then. All right, just thought I'd maybe see if anybody caught on to that. Good enough.
All right, and then we go forward in time. I forgot the year from here, but this is in 1520. They opened a new silver mine in Joachimsthaler in the Bohemian Empire, which was part of the Holy Roman Empire. And this is not the Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire refers to the Germany, Italy, a collection of those kingdoms who joined together, and it also lasted for a long time. And it was also tightly connected by trade, and they had a big trade influence on everyone else, and what money they used spread widely. And this in particular spread very widely because it was 27 grams of very pure silver, and it was consistently pure silver. And by the 1520s, they already were pretty good at measuring how much silver content things has, and they were just very consistent in minting this, and they didn't inflate it for a long time. So this became very popular. And also this coin was huge. This was 1 ounce or 27 grams. So that also kind of made it more respected because it's a heavy one. So when you trade and then you give somebody a really heavy coin, then they really respect it and have more trust in it. We will see that this plays a role in the years after this as well. And the conversion here is that if you have 12 ounces, it makes 1 pound. Just a reminder here for future. So the Holy Roman Empire included Germany, and Germany's history of their money is also very interesting from a point of view of many phenomenons. So they were on the gold. So a lot of countries were using multiple metals or bimetals like silver and gold, and they went then on the standard but it's problematic having both silver and gold, because then you have conversions between them and the value of the underlying metals might change and so forth. So what the German Empire, when it got unified in 1870s, they changed to a standard called Goldmark and minted their coins following that standard. And everything went well until the First World War, and they needed more money. And guess what they did? They started printing paper notes that said that if you have this note, then you can exchange it to gold. But then, of course, they printed way more than what they had gold. Works at the beginning. Everyone knows it's a bad idea, but if you have a good excuse like a war, then governments do it anyway. And that went bad. And then we had the Weimar Republic, and they continued printing money, and then they did this interesting thing that to like stop the inflation, they just like canceled the old money and created a new money called Rentenmark. And because they didn't have the gold either, this was actually, these bills were actually like shares in industry or land or something else. And they used this temporarily to stop inflation. And then they started issuing a new currency, Reichsmark, which then existed until the end of World War II. And then with the with ending the whole Nazi like government, they also ended their money. And in the West Germany, they issued a new money called Deutschmark. And then in East Germany, they issued Ostmark. And then when they unified in 1989, only Deutschmark lived. And then in 1999, it became the euro. This is a really interesting history if you want to check out. Like, this has the story of like gold money and paper money and inflation and war and everything. It's all the ingredients. And like it's also interesting because it's not that super old. It's not like ancient times. It's like in the 1900s, they already had like newspapers and the population was able to read. And a lot of what happened there, in theory, like applies to the modern humans and modern societies, and that could repeat and maybe might be repeating already. All right, then quick look at the other European countries, and I'm picking the big ones. So as you noticed, I went through these empires because the money that was famous like followed these empires. The empires are big, they have lots of trade, and when you have the trade, you then need the money to trade with other, and then their money spreads. So whoever has a big trading empire or big empire in general, their money tends to spread and become trusted by a lot of people. And when it's very trusted, you get the network effects, and then it's like even more and more people wants to use that money. So what empires did we have in Europe? We had the Dutch East India Company. It was founded in 1602. First like stock listed company, massive amount of trade, and in Dutch they used gulden, which means like gold, and the unit was F, not G, and it's F because it's from Florent. They called it Florent because like earlier in Italy, in Florence, the gold coins were like nice and respected, so they wanted to use that. And this is also a recurring pattern that new money borrows like stuff from whatever was like previously well-known and trusted money because they want to get some of the clout of them. And also like incredibly complicated like conversion system. 1 gulden is 20 stuivers, and 1 stuiver is 8 duiten, or 1 gulden is 160 duiten, and then 1 duiten is 2 pennies. Like 4 levels of conversions here. Then Great Britain obviously was a big colonial power from 1500s, and I put here like the end was kind of 1922 when Ireland like got independent or walked out from the kingdom. And they had a pound which has this Roman origin and the symbol as you saw earlier. And they divided it into 20 shillings, and 1 pound was also 240 pence, and that means that 1 shilling was 12 pence, like really complicated system. And it was silver based. And one interesting like major event in the history of pound is that the Brits really liked silver and tea. And they bought massive amount of that from China, but Chinese didn't really need anything from Britain. So what ended up is a lot of silver, like this, the same pound coins, like accumulated in China, and Chinese were willing to accept them because they knew it's silver, and even if it's not their own money, it's silver, so it works for international trade well. And then Great Britain was starting to run out of silver. And then they manufactured, with the help of some Jewish merchants in India, they created this opium epidemic in India, in China, and then when they fully knew that opium is bad and it was banned, like in England, so they did it intentionally with the consequence that they knew that then Chinese are going to start buying opium that was then farmed in India. So they did that, and that's also an interesting story to check out. You have a comment?
Yes. Have you heard about the rumors that all the fentanyl is made in China in a retaliation to that, as a reaction to that?
I don't have any evidence, but I've heard about this rumor, and then like, I don't know like how much you should trust it, but it's also an interesting parallel because we have trade imbalances going on, and the point maybe here to remember is that like money like stops working if you have a massive trade imbalance, sorry. So that's something to think about. Then we have the French Empire that had a slightly shorter period of colonialism, and I put here 1763 as the year when it ended. Does anyone here know why I picked that year? Because they lost Canada to the Brits, and what they did, they had when they had the French Revolution in 1795, they decided that, hey, let's go to the decimal system for our currency. So 1 franc was 10 decimes and 100 centimes. And later you will see that United States also used this system, but United States didn't take the rest of the 10-based system from the Frenchmen. And one notable thing also from Europe is that the first like Western banknote was made in Sweden by the Swedish government bank in 1661, and basically it said that if you have this piece of paper, then you can convert it into a specific amount of gold. Right. So what major empire is missing from this list? Other European countries. Ottoman is Turks and the Byzantine kind of. Spain. So the peso word comes from, again, the pound word for weight, and it was divided into 8 reals, and the reals were divided into 34 maradivs, which means that 1 peso was 272 maradivs. Very complicated, and they, when they found Americas, they got access to massive amount of silver and gold, and similar like in the Joachim Thaler case, when they had a really good access to silver, they were happy to mint silver coins that are very pure silver. They didn't have a need to kind of like immediately start inflating it, and you can see here that it took a very long time for them to inflate it. So from 1497 to 1728, they had a 0.93 fineness in their coin, and then they only slightly inflated it in 1728 and slightly more in 1772. But still, between this period, from basically 1500 to mid 1800, they had a very good reputation that this is a good coin to hold. And this silver peso is like it had a really good reputation, and it was globally because the Spains were doing trade all over the world at this time, but it had a especially good reputation in the Americas. And on this coin is this thing, and that, do you know what that leads to? This straight thing, and then this. Yes, you recognized it. So the dollar is not the D sign, but it has this S and then one like stripe going through. In some places it has 2 stripes because a lot of currencies have 2 stripes going through them.
Is that a snake?
No, it's like a it's like a banner.
Oh.
Yeah. So it has a really good reputation. The timing matches up really well, and this silver peso was called a dollar. So then in the United States, which already had in the Constitution that it can mint coins, so then they made the Coinage Act in 1792, and in that they had $1 was this 1 silver coin, 27 grams, and basically like they copied a bunch of stuff from the Spanish, because that way, like when you make new money, if you copy whatever was like respected and trusted before, it's easier for you to get people to believe in your new money. And they also made, it was a bimetallic system, so they also made a golden eagle that was then worth, this gold coin was worth $10, but it was smaller because gold is more valuable. And at this point, the ratio between silver and gold was 15:1, and the value of gold was $19.75 per ounce. And as you probably know, today it's $4,000 per ounce, so something happened here between. So it was pretty stable for a long time, and you need stability to get adoption of a new currency. In 1834, they had another Coinage Act. They noticed that like people were preferring to use silver and were not using gold, and they were like, because gold ended up being more like valuable, and then instead of using it as money, they took the gold coins and melted them and sold them as gold. So then they had to adjust it a little bit. They put in a 16:1 ratio, and they did this by devaluing gold slightly in dollars. And then, so this was all coins. So then when did US get those famous green bills? So there was a bunch of banks in mid-1800s that were issuing their own bills, and those basically said that the bank director has signed this piece of paper, and it says that if you have this piece of paper, you can convert it into X amount of gold or silver or something else. And then the US Treasury started issuing the same thing, that the US Treasury can also convert, if you hold these paper dollars, into those silver dollars or gold dollars. But it was a messy period, a lot of shady bank stuff going on, not much regulation. And then they had a bank run in 1907 that then made a political atmosphere that they have to like renew things drastically. And this was the time when JP Morgan himself was alive, and he actually stopped the bank run from like being completely crazy by inviting all the bankers to his house, and then he locked them up in his library to prevent them from like doing stuff. But that's another story. But that built up to the political will to start the Federal Reserve. And this is a very interesting thing, because the Federal Reserve is not actually a government agency, because all these banks that already existed, they didn't want to like give over this power to the government, but they understood that the government is going to take over anyway. So as a compromise, the Federal Reserve Act takes these regional banks and then makes like those vote and like collaborate to form the Federal Reserve. And yes, the president appoints them, but as we can see, officially the president can't, for example, fire those people because it's not a government agency. And this started to issue then like banknotes, and it was agreed that nobody else issues any other banknotes. So then this is the time when the US dollar as paper money went fully mainstream. All right, and then after this we get into World War I. So US was originally keeping out from World War I. It didn't have any interest there. But then it was bad for like exports that Europe didn't like buy that much stuff, and then it was annoying that those Germans kept on sinking their shipments going to Europe. And then also JP Morgan was again there saying that, hey, by the way, I borrowed a bunch of money to all these Western European governments. It seems they're losing the war, so I think you should now bail me out and go there and fix the end result of the war so it doesn't go bad for him. So then eventually US joined that. And because the war was happening in Europe and not in US, then immediately after the war, it was really good time for US because all the European countries then bought a bunch of stuff from US, and they were in ruins, and their business, like local businesses in Europe, took a long time to develop before they got back where they were previously. And this led to the Roaring Twenties, and as you for sure everyone knows, the crash in 1929, it was like overheated and lots of speculation and things like that, and then eventually it crashed. And then because at that point US was already a big importer of stuff from elsewhere as well, then it led also to a global recession because US stopped like buying or importing that much stuff. And at this point, all this money was still like convertible to gold. So it was on the gold standard. And then the problem, what happened here is you don't get more gold, so you don't get more money, but you would kind of want to have more trade, and then you have this problem that you don't actually have enough money around for all the trade, and then especially if people get scared, they don't want to hold money and they convert it back to gold. And then a lot of countries in the early 30s went off the gold standard, not just the US didn't go, but US like there was an international way of other currencies depegging from the gold. And in US what they did is that they stopped converting bills to gold. So like regular people couldn't go to the bank anymore. Central banks from other countries could go to the US government and say that, hey, we have here $1 billion, then give us gold. But regular people couldn't do it anymore. And then also they confiscated all the gold from all the people by force, which is kind of crazy. But then again, people agreed because the government gave them notes that here, we take your money, but we're not actually stealing it because we give you a piece of paper that says that here you have like the dollars that was the value of the gold. We just need the gold now, thank you. And then when that was done, they overnight revalued the gold at 35 ounce. So the gold value jumped up and the dollar value went down. But 35 ounces is still pretty low by modern standards. And some people speculate that might this happen again. All right, and then we had the Second World War, and then all these like big empires, all big wars have major economical consequences. And what happened after the Second World War from a money point of view is that there was the Bretton Woods Agreement. So all the Allied countries came together and made an agreement, basically because US wanted everyone to make that agreement, that all the currencies were pegged to the US dollar at almost a fixed ratio. So there was some like fluctuation there, but almost a fixed ratio to the US dollar. And it was first just the Allied countries, but then eventually other countries as well. So for example, like Deutschmark, Italian lira, Japanese yen were also pegged to the US dollar. And by the end of the Second World War, US had, I think, half of the gold in the entire world, and the US dollar was then pegged to this gold that they had. So that was like the stability system, and people agreed to it because it brought stability and it kind of eased international trade because the currencies don't fluctuate that much and things are stable. And also US had a major navy, and in these two world wars before, the Germans had been sinking a bunch of merchant ships. So then having a monetary system and a trade system that includes a major navy that's going to protect all the shipments is like a good deal overall. And in Bretton Woods, they also created the International Monetary Fund to borrow countries' reserve funds so that it's easier for them to keep their currency stable. And what they ended up was mostly borrowing US dollars, and that's why we call US dollars the reserve currency. All right. So US dollars was pegged to the gold, but nobody was like actually accounting that how much gold is there and like is every single dollar that gets printed actually pegged to the gold or not. And French politician Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, I'm probably butchering that, famously said that this is America's exorbitant privilege, basically that they can print money. And the US did print money, even if it was pegged to the gold. They did print money because like you can't really stop that. And by late 1960s, it started to be evident that, hey, there's like probably too much dollars now than what there's actually gold. So, for example, the French and British governments, their central banks started saying that, hey, here's your dollars, you can keep them, give the gold back to us. And the US government didn't want to do that. They had to do it to some degree, but they were reluctant. And at one point, the French Navy actually sent a ship, the French president sent like a Navy ship in front of New York to get the gold. So that's lots of interesting stories here. But I need to move on because it's a long history. All right, so the main point here is that they had almost 600 and they had like were close to like having only half of that left because they had to give away the gold when people were giving in the dollars. So then Richard Nixon famously ended the gold convertibility on August 15th, 1971. And he also did other things. He imposed a 90-day freeze on wages and prices in the US. So this was part of his called Nixon shock to like fix the bad economy. There was like stagflation before this and a lot of other issues going on in the economy as well. And he also used a presidential order to impose an emergency 10% surcharge on imports to artificially make imports more expensive so that there would be less dollars leaking out from US. And I did a small back of the envelope calculation that if they still have this 350 million ounces of gold left, then that would today be valued 1.4 trillion USD. But we know that the government debt is 38 trillion USD, so this is like way like after depegging it from gold, they're like way more dollars than they could have if it was pegged to the gold. All right. So with this, we got fiat money widespread, like in Europe and US and everywhere. Do you know where the word fiat comes from? It's not the car company. No. So it means that let there be. It's by like because we say so. So the Bible in Genesis 1:3 says that fiat lux, which means that let there be light. So fiat money is just like it's like because it's money because we say so. Let there be money. That's it. All right. So what happened after this 1971 and dismantling also of the Bretton Woods? So IMF still exists, but it's part now of the World Bank. The currencies are floating; they're not fixed. But United States has these swap lines, so they agree between different countries that they agree to buy a specific amount of their currency, and then they can convert it back to dollar at a fixed rate. So that helps keep currencies stable, and that's used politically to like make allies have a more stable currencies. And that recently happened with Argentina, as you maybe read from the news. They got a 20 billion swap line. The international money transfers go through SWIFT, which is a US-based organization, or they go if you are not on the sanctions list. And because of dollars was like the reserve currency and used for international trade since the Second World War, there is this thing called Eurodollars, which has nothing to do with the currency euro. It just means that dollars that are outside of the United States and other people who are not like other organizations and companies are transferring dollars between them, and it's not like circulating the US economy. So that's like the Eurodollar system. And then we have petrodollars, which refers to after the energy crisis, United States made agreement with Saudi Arabia that they have to sell their oil in dollars, which helped strengthen also the US dollar that had just a couple of years earlier depegged from gold. And the Saudis didn't renew this contract last year, so they don't have to sell oil in dollars anymore. But keep in mind that the Saudi, their own currency, rial, is pegged with a fixed rate to the US dollar. So if they sell with their own currency, it still like supports the US dollar. And the company that does all the oil selling is called Saudi Aramco. And the Aramco comes from Arabian American company. So it's not like independent Saudi thing. And then this is the big thing that happened. You see, like here, 60s, US government debt just a couple $100 billion. And then when we come to the 80s, it starts going up and up and up and up. And this is one form of printing money that you issue, like the treasury issues. Not that you can convert dollars to gold, but you can convert these papers to dollars in the future with an interest. And that's now at 38 trillion. All right. So what could happen in the future? So now we kind of got, with the 38 trillion debt, we kind of got to where we are today. So what could happen in the future with the US dollar situation? So European countries realized a long time ago that this exorbitant privilege is not ideal, not like helping them. The European countries got rid of their own currencies and formed a unified big currency called euro. First, it existed only electronically, and then it as bills and coins in 22. And then in China, we have yuan. It's the same symbol as in Japan, but Japan has yen. China, it's yuan. And actually, they have a couple variants of these. They have the CNY, which is the national yuan, and then there's CNH. So China has capital controls. You can't take yuans out from China freely. So, but in Hong Kong, they have an exchange that foreigners can use to freely trade yuans, and that's sometimes like referred separately as CNH. And then they have their own central bank digital currency, but it's fully centralized. There's no distributed nodes. There's just one RPC endpoint that does everything. And so the money is called the money is called yuan, but the currency is called renminbi. And where are these going? So this graph is from SWIFT that does the international money transfers, and they published this in August. And this is by volume of like what's the value? Sorry, not volume. By value of the transactions they are facilitating. So US dollar is still number one with 46%. Euro is up to 25%. Then we have British pound, Japanese yen, Canadian dollar, interestingly a sixth. And right after that is the Chinese yuan. So there's a lot of things in the news that there's more and more like yuan being used, but it's still like far behind. All right. And then in 2009, Bitcoin launched. And people who did Bitcoin, they launched it in 2009 specifically because of the crisis in 2008. And what followed the 2008 crisis is the governments bailed out banks by printing more money. So Satoshi Nakamoto and others didn't like this, so they wanted to use a currency that has a fixed supply, so there will never be inflation. And this fixed supply is here in this file on this line 88, controlled by the halvening time. So it is fixed supply for now, but then again, it's just one line of code. So at some point, if all the miners agree, they could change that. And one big problem Bitcoin had is that it had a 10-minute transaction time, because they wanted to have maximum security, and at that time people didn't know how to do consensus really fast. So they opted for a slow transaction time. And then some of you might remember, like 2014, 15, 16, there was like this twist in the Bitcoin community that should the transaction time be faster, so it can actually be used for practical payments. And Lightning came out of that, and Vitalik started writing the Ethereum white paper. And that launched in 2015. And the biggest innovation with Ethereum is that it's not just a distributed database or ledger, but it's actually a full virtual machine. So you are not just doing transactions there, but it reads all these opcodes from the transactions that people post, and it can do any computations basically. But it's expensive because you pay gas, so all the smart contracts and everything try to do as little computation as possible. But in theory, you could do whatever you want if you are willing to pay the gas fee. And that led to DAOs and distributed exchanges and NFTs and stable coins. And we are very close to the end here.
I was just going to add in that in between, Bitcoin and Ethereum, like there was Litecoin and Dogecoin and a whole bunch of other coins that were like designed to be quick as well. So like it wasn't just the jump straight to Ethereum, but there was other things that were aiming to speed up block times and do things as well.
And there's also other problems like the proof of work and how much energy it requires. And Ethereum then had famously the merge in 2002 and went to proof of stake, but started out with proof of work, which is really smart because then it kind of distributed the initial set of nodes that are participating in the network before it went to proof of stake. Any system that immediately goes to proof of stake is very suspicious. Like Solana, for example, is like the Solana holders are very centralized. All right, so stable coins. Here is the Genius Act. So after a lot of resistance for crypto, now the new government doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but they're also doing some good stuff, in my opinion. And this Genius Act is now like setting out the rules for stable coins and how it's going to be regulated and like that. So United States dollars might have a second coming as a stable coins on blockchains or on cryptocurrency world. Then this screenshot to the right is from Bank of International Settlements. They had this Enbridge project a couple of years ago, which then it's rumored that the United States didn't like it, so they asked them to stop it. So then in the fall of last year, they made this announcement that it has now graduated, and now the countries that wanted to have this Enbridge can continue with it. But it's not based on like a public blockchain, but it's actually based on an EVM. So it took the EVM from Ethereum to use that because like it's very hard for governments and like for big organizations to like forcefully innovate something. So if they are smart, they can maybe follow up by picking the best, like cherry picking the best innovations. And Enbridge is indeed based on EVM. It's not in the public network in any way. It's run by the central banks, but the central banks of this, China and Russia and Brazil and Saudi Arabia and others, they don't trust each other. But they can use cryptocurrency internally to like solve the trust issue amongst themselves. And then this is from September, from Swift, which I already mentioned. they announced that they're going to start a blockchain project, and they, in this press release, they say that they're collaborating with Consensus and they're building on either Ethereum directly or on EVM at least. So, and this is the future part, and let's see how things go. So, what did we learn? Long presentation, 1 hour. Thanks for for staying around. First and foremost, I think that money is a system of belief or trust. I think even belief is maybe a better word than trust. Like if enough people believe it, then it can be used as money. Inflation is inevitable. Like it's just like human nature. Whoever can issue more money will eventually start doing it. Like at some point, some excuse will arise that they will like have the social acceptance or enough like support to do it, at least inside the government. They will start doing it. And usually the reason that triggers inflation is large deficits, that you just run out of money, the economy is bad, you're not getting enough taxes, trade imbalances between countries, that somebody is exporting too much and then the other part is just paying, but there's no money coming back. So then like money is a means of exchange. So you have massive trade imbalance, then money stops working, and then it leads to like somebody wants to print money more to fix the situation. And then also wars is among the leading causes for inflation, because once you have war, then the government can do whatever they want, and among the atrocities they do is that they print massive amounts of money. And usually like, yeah, depends on the outcome of the war, you might just lose all your money, or you might lose all your money and all your properties. And the best way to keep money stable and uncorrupted is to promote decentralization. So there's no one party that can just print money. Transparency. So even if somebody does print money, then at least they get caught immediately. They can't do it secretly. And then also balanced trade. And for the Ethereum crowd here, I would say that like Ethereum is doing the two of these very well. And I believe that Ethereum is going to like truly go mainstream and break through when we get this balanced trade thing going on. Right now, I don't think there's enough Ethereum being used for payments. Right now, like over the past 10 years, people have been like promoting cryptocurrencies as like an investment, and I don't subscribe to that thinking. Like I think it's good for you to have some Ethereum, but it's not designed to be an investment. It is producing a little bit because the nodes and the gas fees for running the system, but it's not like a business that's supposed to be making massive amounts of profit, and it's not an investment. First and foremost, it's a system to like sell goods and services, and we need a better wallet, and I think that will lead to more adoption. So looking out for that. Thank you, everyone. Christian.
I just want to talk about the last point you said. So you don't think that people should view Ethereum as this investment asset, and you think people should treat it as this like just this commodity that we use as a medium of exchange. But like you, I would say like famously are an ETH bull. So why would you hold this asset for the long term, like in large quantities, if you think that people going forward like will not view it as this speculation or this like investment asset? Like you say, I should only hold a little bit because I just got to use it for gas. So why would you hold a bunch of it thinking the price is going to go up?
So the price will go up for sure, but I mean, if you buy like Cameco shares for nuclear, then that's actually like mining something and producing something, real stuff that it's selling. So that's probably gonna, like stocks are probably gonna go up more. So if you want to find the optimal investment, then some company that's producing like lots of profit is a better investment. But having, I think, like if you want to park your money and you want to have like a safe place and you are okay with the small like gain, like 3% yield on staking, then you can like park some money in Ethereum. And then another reason is that if the governments start to fail and governments start viewing crypto as like an enemy of the government because it threatens the government's control over money, then there might be some controls on how you on-ramp into crypto. So if you get now self-custody Ethereum now, then you will be able to trade goods and services in that economy without being like risk at being censored when you start doing that.
So you think the price of Ethereum will eventually like stabilize or trade more like a commodity than a stock?
I don't know, but also like Ethereum doesn't. Ethereum's kind of dynamic. It doesn't have a fixed supply in the same way. Yes, it kind of has like it's approaching. I think it's 121 million or something like that. But Ethereum is more like dynamic and it's evolving and the people developing Ethereum are not developing it for an investment thing. The point of Ethereum's value is to go slowly up and like remain its value, so it incentivizes the people running the nodes to keep the network running and provide value by executing all the stuff for everyone else. It's not designed to like go up all the time. So that's why I'm not saying it's not like primarily an investment, but it's probably not going to go down either. So, and it's going to have a small yield even if the value stays the same. And then also like what is value? Like it's clear for like Cameco that when they're mining uranium and selling it, then they're producing the value that somebody can do nuclear power from the uranium. But if you have two currencies and they fluctuate, then did Ethereum's value go up because it went up or because US dollar went down? For example, first 6 months of this year, the US dollar went down by 15%. So if you had Ethereum, your Ethereum went up. But if you're European, your Ethereum didn't go up that much. So.
Yeah, that's great. The last thing I would say, I guess one point is like I don't think it'll trade like a currency as much as like a commodity. So like lumber or like oil or something. And you see these prices are generally pretty like cyclical because it's this commodity that is like mined or like someone has to like harvest it from the ether and then it's used like within this economy to perform this like productive function. So I could agree with you in the long term that maybe it doesn't like go up only. So the last question, if you had like $100,000 for a financial portfolio, how would you distribute it between Ethereum and a basket of stocks?
Well, the stocks depends on if you have good buying opportunities. So if you ask Warren Buffett, he has currently like hundreds of billions in cash because he doesn't have good buying opportunities. He doesn't see good buying opportunities in the market. So I don't know, like, can't tell you like what to do with the stocks. But if you don't have anything, if you don't find any stocks, I think you could probably hold your money and your savings in Ethereum, and that would probably keep its value better than if you're holding US treasuries because they have 38 trillion and they're not going to be paying that back. So,
and just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody online, this is not financial advice by any means or matter. This is all educational purposes only. So thank you.
I heard buy ETH. That's all I heard. Thanks, Otto.
So then, but then another point of view is that maybe if you have like 5K in ETH, then you could like that would be enough for you to like sell your labor and then buy stuff. Like, I mean, what's your like the monthly turnover for your personal economy to run. So if something happens with the US dollar, say, and you have $5,000 worth of ETH, then you could maybe that amount of ETH would be enough to like run your personal economy and do some local trading.
Hey Otto, thanks for the talk. So through all of history, through all the different types of coins and fiats and stuff, one thing that's remained consistent is gold and silver. So how do you feel like, kind of looking into the future, like gold has always been something that's always persisted across empires and stuff. Do you think like gold, I think in the digital world, it seems to lose its value a little bit. We use Bitcoin as like the digital gold, the replacement of it. Do you think Bitcoin is replacing gold, or do you think actual physical gold still has value in this new future?
I think actual gold has value, but then again, I wouldn't say gold is an investment either, because again, it doesn't produce anything. If you want to invest in gold, buy a gold mining company, because they produce actual gold. And so it's just matter like the point of gold is to like keep its value, because it's something that over time has proven to keep its value for like a very long time. But also what's happening now with $4,000 per ounce gold, it's like it's not that itself is not stable. If you look back into history, like what you can buy with gold has been relatively stable, and now it has a huge spike. So I don't know. And again, I wouldn't give any advice here. Like if you want to have good like returns, then find good stocks that you think have good returns. And then this holding cash or gold is mostly a question. Which one do you think will lose least amount of value when you're holding it?
Yeah, kind of a separate question. So back in, I think you said like the Spanish, the large silver, the really like heavy one that felt like really good, right? It felt really good giving people this piece of silver, and they were like, wow, that's worth a lot. But crypto is a lot more ambiguous. It's all digital, and people can't really see the value. You did say that like wallets, if we had a really good wallet, that could really drive adoption.
Yeah.
But you know, I think people still like the physicality of things. How do you feel about just like everyday usage? Like, was the average person really going to appreciate digital currency the same way they appreciate something they could touch and feel?
How many of you have used cash this week? How many of you have used credit cards this week? So I mean, compared to a credit card, like NFC payment with your phone, the crypto wallet experience is going to be the same. But you can actually, like, we need also more education. Crypto is just mathematics. So you could print your private key on a piece of paper, and then that would, like, whoever has that private key can do transactions on behalf of whatever balance is tied to that private key. And you can have things like this. So this is a metal coin. The metal doesn't have any value, but here's the public address of a Bitcoin wallet. And you can scan this and then know how much Bitcoin is on this, because if you peel this off, it's going to break. It's one-time use only, but when you peel it off, you can see the private key on the inside. So like, to have a crypto wallet, you can also just have a piece of paper.
Is that a Casadius coin or Cassius coin? It's not one of those, is it?
I don't remember what's the name of this, but it still has balance.
You're going to pass it around?
And I also have a Canadian silver coin, which the face value is $5, but it's 1 ounce. So that's now like, what is it, $75 in Canada. And this is the 27 gram thing. So if you come here, you can look at this, but I'm not going to pass this around.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, going back to gold, I don't think it was such a good investment in 1920 Germany. You would have lost a lot of money if you hold gold back then. But I have to double check the date. And also, as you said, it was confiscated for 40 years in US, and it could happen again. Because, yes, from 1930 to 1970,
Yeah.
if you didn't give your gold back to the US government, you will go to jail and have like a huge fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, that can happen again. So it's not a safe haven guaranteed.
So once again, I would not consider money or cryptocurrency or valuable metals as an investment because they don't produce anything. It's more like which is more likely to stay stable. And of course, like any physical money or valuables, you could lose them because it's a war and somebody comes and steals it from you, or the government confiscates it from you or something. But then again, crypto is pretty cool because you can basically just memorize your seed phrase or something, and it's going to be really hard for people to scan your brain and get it out from there.
Yeah, quick question regarding the inflation chart and looking forward. I don't know if some of you are familiar with bid bonds, and some of the talk around that is how to mitigate future inflation by mixing Bitcoin with treasuries. And I was just wondering, either you or anybody else who wants to shed some light on that, because I would love to get educated on that.
Okay, so here's my controversial take. The Bitcoin fixed supply is this line of code. If the miners, like once the halvening happens a couple of times and what miners earn from mining Bitcoin goes lower than what it costs for what they pay for the energy to do the proof of work, or other circumstances appear that all the miners change their opinion that maybe this supply isn't enough, then that number will get changed.
Are you saying that there's not going to be enough fees on chain to help subsidize instead of having to have like the block reward subsidy?
Yeah.
What's going on? How come people aren't using the chain? What's happening?
Bitcoin.
Who's using the chain on Bitcoin? The JPEGs are using it, I think. I think they're putting JPEGs on the chain, and that's getting getting scolded away.
Yeah. So in this regard, I think Ethereum's model is incentives are much better because you have
it has
like
perpetual kind of incentives built
Yeah.
into it, and then you
Yeah.
have the burn mechanism on the other side, so you can actually have a deflationary thing. So yeah, I do agree with you on that sense, where like it's interesting to see this elastic supply in a sense with what Ethereum can do with based on demand as well. Then it goes down. So I like that model. I'm very curious how that'll play out. That 21 million is kind of an interesting number. I think we're still a few halvings away from that becoming an issue, but yeah, let's see.
All right. Thanks,
Cool.
everyone. I have a blog, and I occasionally mostly I write about open source, but also sometimes about crypto and finances. So check it out. Thanks, everyone.
And yeah, if you don't mind, just fold up your chairs if you can. We'll just talk about. Oh yeah, and then next week we've got Owen's gonna do a talk, and then we've got on the November 13th. We have Hype Vancouver. So anybody that's interested, it's the very first Hyperliquid Canada event that will be taking place. So if anybody is interested or Hyperliquid curious, we'll be hosting an event. The location to be disclosed yet, but November 13th. First event. Okay.